Hey guys, I'm Try to Thrive, and today I'm going to be doing a bit of a follow-up video on my last Planet Zoo video. The one just before this. It was a video where I speculated about the birds in Planet Zoo. And just in case you don't really want to go back and watch that, I'll sum it up for you. Basically, birds in this game have been neglected. So far we're halfway through waiting and only one bird has been revealed. Out of all of that, they have not said anything about really how we're going to incorporate them in, you know. So basically, it looks like things like aviaries will not be a part of it, things like that. We'll be getting, I'm guessing, more land-based terrestrial birds that we'll build enclosures for and will be treated and managed just like our large reptiles and mammals. That is basically what I assume it's going to be. But because we don't know for sure, I'll still be incorporating aviaries into the video I'm doing today. Because today, I'll be doing my own personal wish list for birds in Planet Zoo. It's split into 3 different categories, and each bird I'm going to list with a certain higher tier of likeliness for the game. So basically the 3 groups there are, the first 5 go into the multi-species aviary group. So basically these are your smaller birds, you know, birds that could live together with other birds all in a, walk through aviary. That's, the first group, small birds. And then we move on to basically our medium birds. And these could be single species aviary birds, or simply these are the birds that are too big to really be with it. You don't usually see these with any other types of birds, but they're not terrestrial like the birds I think are going to be in the game. I'm still going to be doing, 5 of those, my personal 5 of, both the first group I already said and that other group. And then I'm going to be doing my top 10 most wanted top 10 most wanted birds for the final group, which are the birds I think we'll be getting, terrestrial birds. And so basically those are all that is going to equal up to the 20 most wanted birds in Planet Zoo. And the only reason why I'm doing the first 2 groups are going to be about aviaries is because, well, we don't know yet, but I assume there won't be. It's also so each time we talk about a new bird, I'm going to rank it as either likely, possible, or unlikely. I'm not trying to copy anyone, if you know why I'm saying that, but it's the easiest. I think, each bird is either likely, possible, or unlikely. And just know the first 2 groups are all unlikely in my opinion. Because, like I said, I don't think there's going to be aviaries, but just in case, I'm going to do, my own wish list for those, as I already said. So without further ado, I'd like to begin with the first 5 most wanted birds, and this is going to be one more time for the smaller, multi-species aviary birds, smaller birds. So, let's begin. Okay, so let's start with group number 1, and I know I keep saying it, but just to be clear, group number 1 is the multi-species aviary creatures. Lots of if you walk into an aviary, well, specifically a walk-in aviary section, you find a lot of these smaller birds flying around. A lot of the birds on this particular part of the list are mainly here because of how pretty they are, and maybe the funky features they have, or even the funky name, So I'm just going to quickly name them one by one, and then show you a screenshot of it, and then we'll move on. Okay, so for group 1, number 5 is the Gala cockatoo. It is like a really, I think it just is a good example as a bird that can fit in with the crowds of other birds. It is just really pretty. That's literally the main reason why it's number 5. It's just not as exciting as the other ones, but it still would easily work well in an aviary. You would usually kind of see cockatoos and parakeets and a lot of smaller birds, but it just is a really pretty small bird, and I don't see why I wouldn't be able to make it into the aviaries. Yeah. Okay, so number 4 is the masked lapwing. Okay, this bird is in because of the funkiness it has, that crazy face. Wow. A lot of these birds are also all in my local aviary at my local zoo, so that might give them a bit of a benefit. And I've seen this guy in person. He is just, the way you see it is really how they are. It's just a really fascinating looking bird, and that's really the main reason why it made it onto the first list. Okay, so number 3. Number 3 is the laughing kookaburra. Australia's most famous bird. I think it was Australia. It has a really cool, it has a funky name. It also is just it's one of those most famous birds, sort of. It's a famous aviary bird, so there's no way I could not have included it. I like the kookaburra, Also, every time I think about it, it reminds me of that scene from Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book, that nighttime scene with Shere Khan and the wolf pups, and he talks about the kookaburra. That part always gave me chills for some reason. So, yeah, it's more about how the laughing kookaburra makes me feel. Okay, so number 2. Number 2 is the mandarin duck. This is the prettiest duck I've ever seen. Wow, it has so much color to it. I believe it is an Asian variety of duck, and every time a lot of the aviaries I've been to have multiple different types of duck in built-in artificial ponds in like the middle of an aviary. Even if the aviary is inside, there's still usually ducks wandering around on the ground. The only like real terrestrial part of the aviary. So the mandarin duck, if I had to pick one duck, it would be the mandarin duck, and that is basically why it is in, because of the prettiness and because I've seen it. It's just really good looking. Yeah, it's just pretty. Okay, so I've kind of blabbered on now for a bit, but number 1 for the small aviary birds is the Victoria crowned pigeon. This is a thick bird for walk-in aviaries, but I have seen it in every single aviary I've been in, and it is really just a pretty pigeon. That's really why. It also doesn't really ring a bell like it's a pigeon. It's weird. It's weird but beautiful, and that to me is, if there is aviaries in the game, which I already said I doubt there is, I would want the Victoria crowned pigeon. It just is a good example of a pretty odd bird. Does that make sense? Anyway, I hope I didn't confuse you too much. Those are just, this is the worst, this is, the group that I think we're going to have the least amount of chance of having, but, so they're all in the unlikely group, or unlikely chance, but, that's just that. So, I would now like to move on to group 2. Okay, group number 2. Now, I didn't feel like I was super clear about this, so I'm going to go over it one more time. Basically, group 2 is more aviary creatures, but more specifically, larger aviary creatures. For example, your raptors, macaws, hornbills. Birds that are big enough and more significant enough to have their own aviary. Not saying they always are. You can sometimes see macaws in walk-in aviaries if they're really that big of an aviary, but I don't always do. I just feel like a lot of these birds are also good enough on their own. They don't have to have multiple species. Like, for example, that cockatoo I said before you could build its own enclosure, and I've seen stuff like that before in zoos, but is it really that exciting? It fits in better with other birds, but not like these. These birds will go by themselves fine, but are still aviary. I hope that makes it a bit more clear. So yeah, let's begin the next 5. Group number 2. For number 5 is the great horned owl. So this bird is, it's a great horned owl. Raptor, owls are one of my favorite types of raptors, and if I had to have any owl, it would be the great horned owl. There's just, that's really it. It's an owl. I love owls. But the rest of the birds on this list are a bit more exciting, or more colorful, you know what I'm saying? I like my colorful birds. And, yeah, but the gray horned owl, honestly, I would want to, if there were raptors in the game, which I'm not saying there are or aren't, I would hope and probably expect the great horned owl to make it in. Okay, so number 4 for group number 2 is the wrinkled hornbill. Now, my zoo has this locally after they opened up their Lands of Change at the Brevard Zoo. They have a whole entire exhibit dedicated to these guys, and they are a very pretty hornbill. I would want, if there were aviaries, I would want any kind of hornbill, but if I had to pick one, it would be the wrinkled hornbill. It is just a significantly large hornbill with beautiful colors, and yeah, that's really it. I love hornbills, and I had to pick the wrinkled. Okay, so number 3 is our first macaw, the hyacinth macaw. It is the large blue macaw, so you'd see at zoos. My zoo also has these. All these birds are also at my zoo. No, sorry, no, they're not. No, they're not. But I know the hyacinth macaw is. And once again, it's mainly because, well, no, actually, this one, the reason why hyacinth macaw, why I'd want it so much, is well, it's I believe last I checked, it is one of the largest macaw species. So I feel like building an exhibit for it would be the most significant, if you know what I mean. Like, it's a large macaw. I mean, seriously, it's as big as any kind of a lot of different types of raptors. So, hyacinth macaw, I'd want if we had to have macaws in Planet Zoo. And that's basically it. And there's not a whole lot of reason for all of these being in, personally, but I would want the hyacinth macaw. So yeah. Alright, number 2 for group number 2 is the next macaw, the scarlet macaw, the original, our, classic red macaw. And once again, it's because, well, one, the colors, as usual, because I keep saying it, but it's true. Colors mean a lot to me in birds. Also, it's just such a, it's a real significant macaw because of the popularity. And when I think of birds like this when I think of a group of birds like this, the scarlet macaw always pops in my mind first. So of course I would want it if we could get it. And for all we know, maybe we will. But yeah, the scarlet macaw, classic bird. Alright, number 1, and I think a lot of people would like this one. I sure do, and I would love to do this. It's perfect for conservation. It is the California condor. Now, not too long ago, I was at the Oregon Zoo, and they have a fabulous California condor exhibit going on. Did a great job of educating us, and I really was inspired by that. So, if I had to have any type of raptor, it would be the California condor. It is just such a cool, perfect conservation bird, if you know what I mean. I mean, why don't I say that? No. Sorry. It is just a perfect bird for conservation, and it's well, first off, it's a very large bird. That, and even though it may not be a colorful bird, the size of it and the reason why it needs to be focused on is enough to make it the most wanted, mine personally, most wanted bird for group number 2. I would love to build a really cool large aviary dedicated just to California condors. That is what I'd love to do. So yeah, that is the end of group 2, and now we're moving on to and also, as I said, all these birds are unlikely, but moving on to group number 1, where everything has a chance at being likely, possible, or unlikely. But these are your more terrestrial ground birds that I totally expect our Frontier is diving into, But these are just my personal top 10 most wanted terrestrial birds. So yeah, let's begin. Alright, for group number 3, number 10 is the emu. Probably the most famous of all Australian birds. I mean, that are the kookaburra. The emu, I can almost certainly expect in the game because it's just such a famous zoo bird, I suppose. Not as famous as the ostrich, but we'll get to that later. So personally, I do list it as a likely. I really do want it, but not as much as the other 9 animals for sure. Because, well, though I like it, he's not as exciting to me. When you hear my number 1, you'll understand why. But yeah. So emu as number 10. All right. So moving on to number 9 is the black swan. Last I checked, another Australian bird, I think. Could be wrong about that, but I do think it's an unlikely species, but I do expect some kind of swan in the game. That's a perfect bird for them to implement, a type of swan, because, well, they hardly ever go into the air, and, building a nice little pond, a secure pond, would be perfect for a swan in a zoo. I would love to do that. I could totally see them doing that, and I do expect us to be able to do something like that. So, if I had to pick a swan, it would be the black swan. It's also at my zoo, locally, and I do love it. It's just a really pretty, obvious swan. It sticks out, and, if I had to pick any swan, it would be that one. So, yeah, that's number 9. Alright, number 8 is the gray-crowned crane. Okay, this one I also put as a likely. Likely. And, Okay, so this is a bird I always see at African-themed sections and zoos. It's just a perfect bird to walk around. You know, it's like a much calmer version of the ostrich. I mean, it's not at all like the ostrich, but between it and the ostrich, I always see appear in African parts of zoos. And so why wouldn't we want to have it here? It's just a really cool-looking bird, and that's literally it. It just has such a funky little head, and I'd love to have a group of gray-crowned crane walking around my plain zebra and black wildebeest exhibit, you know, that kind of stuff. I'd love to do that, and the gray-crowned crane will bring it. Okay, so number 7 is the king penguin. Okay, so penguins. I have not at all talked about penguins yet. If we are getting terrestrial birds, because obviously we are, well, if it's significantly about terrestrial birds, I do expect penguin. You know, if they want to make up for not having aviaries, penguins are perfect. Sure, their exhibits will be more tight and complex, and maybe we won't be able to build the most zoo-like penguin exhibits. Still, I do expect penguins to be in, and I do expect the king penguin to be one of them. Because first off, I know other people will be like, what about the emperor penguin? Well, I've never, ever seen an emperor penguin in a zoo before. I have, though, seen king penguins. So, I just wanted to pick a penguin for number 7, and I wanted to pick the king. My other option was the Gen 2, but I picked king. So I do put it as a likely animal. If you like penguins too, I'd love to hear your opinion on what penguin you'd like to see in the comments down below. Alright, so number 6, also as a likely chance of coming in, the greater flamingo. Okay, so there has to be some kind of flamingo in the game, even though we missed World Flamingo Day. I do expect the greater flamingo because, well, it's just, I don't know, it was either that, in my opinion, or the Chilean, or the lesser. But I expect the greater flamingo as the most likely chance, because it just has the most significant flamingo-esque to it. I mean, it's flamingos, we gotta get flamingos. I'll be so surprised if we don't. I'll be honestly upset if we don't. I'd love to build a nice little flamingo pond with some roseate spoonbills, you know? That's what I want to do. If not greater, then at least Chilean. But yeah. Greater flamingo for number 6 as a likely chance. Okay, so number 5 is the ostrich, the classic ostrich. And I also checked, I believe there are subspecies of ostrich, but does it really matter? Any kind of ostrich is good. And of course, and if there was a group higher than likely, then yeah. But I'd say the ostrich is a must for the game, obviously. And of course, I would want it. I can't think of anyone that wouldn't want to build an ostrich exhibit. I mean, honestly, it's the world's largest bird. Of course we're going to get it. So yeah, that's number 5, and of course it is a likely animal. Basically, I mean, it's almost safe to say we'll be getting it, but who knows. Alright, so number 4 is the roseate spoonbill. I just mentioned it not too long ago, but the roseate spoonbill is a beautiful bird that I'd love to put next to my flamingos. It is a South American spoonbill. It's a good example of like a bird that doesn't have to be. I mean, it has a cool little significant feature to its beak, but it's still, other than that, though, it fits in perfectly with zoos. And also, it's colorful as like a wetlands bird, which is, I mean, it has a couple different colors. So I would love to see the roseate spoonbill make it into the game. I mean, that is more of that feels more like a lighter bird for your ponds, but. I mean, yeah, that's good. Actually, it's good to have a lighter bird for our ponds if we do get to do that kind of stuff. The roseate spoonbill would fit it for me. So, yeah, and I think it's a possible chance to get it because I do see it in zoos, but it doesn't mean it's gonna make it in. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, number 3. This one is sadly an unlikely choice or unlikely chance, but I think the wild turkey would be a really cool addition to my zoos. You don't really see exhibits dedicated to wild turkeys in zoos, and they're turkeys, you know. It's kind of like it's like the chicken of the wild, and at least specifically in North America. Still, I would love to build. I would plan to do a North American trail part of my zoo. I would want the turkey to have its own significant space because the tom turkey alone, which is the males, are very big and can have colors, and then the female, it feels like a significant North American bird. It is probably the most significant North American bird. Yeah, definitely. So I would love to see it, but I do think it's unlikely though, mainly because you don't really see them as I don't know, significant birds for zoos. You don't always have to have a turkey, but personally, I would want some turkey on my platter, yo. Okay, so yeah, that was number 3. Moving on to number 2, with a possible chance, I would love to have the marabou stork, another African bird, perfect for the wetlands of Africa. This bird is just it's so ugly that it's beautiful, and I love it. It's also at my zoo. It has a giant sack hanging down from its neck for some reason, so I think that's funny. It just has such a, it's, wow. Also, I don't know if this is true, but someone once told me that they eat flamingos, greater flamingos, or was it lesser? They eat flamingos of Africa, and I was honestly quite shocked at that. So the marabou stork, if it's true, is a savage, ugly, beautiful beast, and I would love to have it with the African crowned crane in a wetland, or an African bird environment. That is exactly what I want. And so the marabou stork altogether is, for me, definitely the second most wanted bird. Okay, number 1. Now if you have watched my top 10 most wanted animals on Planet Zoo, you might know what it is. For me, number 1, which sadly, in my opinion, has an unlikely chance due to the emu taking its place, the cassowary. Now, I know there's a couple different types of cassowary, but there's not any real major difference between them, more about where they're located. So, it doesn't matter what type of cassowary, I want a cassowary. Cassowaries are, for me, my favorite bird. They're like the last living dinosaur. They have they are very dangerous birds, and my local zoo is a big cassowary fan because they have multiple exhibits dedicated to cassowaries. It is just a crazy ass bird, and I'd love to build an exhibit for them. So all I'm asking, Frontier, is that you give me the cassowary. But sadly, like I said, I do not expect it to make it in, mainly because it is. I feel like it has been. It's like, last I checked, it is the 3rd largest bird, and sadly I feel like the emu and the ostrich will take its place. But if they're willing to have a 3rd large bird, please go with the cassowary. It just has colors, danger, and is like literally a freaking living dinosaur. I want the cassowary, but I guess I'll just have to keep my fingers crossed. So yes, everyone, that's the end of my 3rd group and the end of my entire video. I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. I plan to do a top 10 most wanted invertebrates in the game, because that's another lacked group. I mean, we've heard of the Brazilian wandering spider, and that's it. So I'd love to do my own personal, top 10 or 20 invertebrates. So keep your eye out for that. Whatever that though, thank you so much for watching the video, and stay tuned for more Planet Zoo news.